Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to this channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back to a new video. Please be sure to leave a like on this video as well, as it will help the video rank at a higher level, so it can be seen by more fans like yourselves. Sit back, relax, stay scared. So I'm going to try to keep this as accurate as possible, but it's been shoved deep into my memory bank for years. Certain details are fuzzy, but here goes nothing. A little over a decade ago, I was working for the local cable internet company. I was fresh out of high school, and it was my first real job. I should mention that sometime in my preteen years, I developed a habit of snooping through people's things. Whether it was a family member's house or friends, I would always manage to slip away into people's rooms, closets, bathrooms, poke around, looking for secrets and hidden items. No, I would never steal anything, just take mental note of the things I found and then put them back without leaving a trace. So as you can imagine, landing a job that placed me in people's houses to install cable was almost guaranteed to stir up a desire, my desire to indulge in my long forgotten habit. When installing wires for TVs and computers, I would end up in crawl spaces, closets, behind desks, and sometimes under beds to reach outlets and such. I'd stumble on things like porn collections, embarrassing personal hygiene products, and more than a few times extremely large collections of sex toys. After a while, it went from stumbling upon these things to outright looking for them. Most homeowners were too lazy to follow me from room to room, so they'd either be downstairs or outside in the yard while I went about doing my thing. And like I said, I wasn't taking anything with me, just observing. About 4 to 5 months into me working this job, I ended up at a woman's house. She was in her late 20s or early 30s, white with sandy blonde hair, and a sort of a hippie bohemian vibe, mixed with a bit of emo. She had a pretty big house for a single person, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, and multiple living areas. But it appeared that she was the only one living there, other than her cat who would occasionally run by while I was doing my job. She let me know that she'd be outside on her porch, and to let her know if I needed anything. The house was quiet and big, so I knew I would be able to hear her coming and have plenty of time to clean up if I happened to go snooping around again. The perfect storm. All in all, it was pretty uneventful. I carried on with my work, but every so often I would take a peek around at her things. She was pretty hot to me, so I probably would have been excited to find something that would allude to her sexual side, but no such luck. Just papers, knickknacks, some stuff that appeared to be schoolwork, but peeking out from under a pillow was a notebook, similar to the old cow print ones we'd use in school. I knew for sure the given placement it had to be a diary of some sort. So I looked around to make sure she was still outside, and then cracked it open. Boring. The first few pages were random notes, planning, grocery lists, far from the scandalous journaling about sexcapades and one-night stands that I'd hoped for. Just as I was about to put it back, I turned the page and saw a few words that caught my eye. Something's along the line of panic, anxious, safe. With concern and excitement, I went on to read a detailed story written in first person about her hitting a man over the head, realizing he wasn't conscious, recruiting help cleaning up the mess, and dumping the body in a nearby river. She also journaled about the anxiety and paranoia she was feeling about everything that happened, and the stress of sharing the secret with the person who helped her dump the body. I remember being extremely uneasy and feeling more creeped out in that house at every minute that passed by. The silence of the house that I previously found peaceful started to bother me. Even the jingling of the cat's collar was beginning to haunt me like something out of a horror movie. I was terrified that I'd be caught and she'd take me out to ensure I wouldn't tell about what I had read, but I managed to power through the job and get the fuck out of there. On the drive home, I managed to convince myself that I probably just stumbled on her notes, or an excerpt from some fictional novel she was writing. It did read more like a novel than a personal diary, but honestly there's no telling. I laughed it off with a few friends later on, and never spoke much of it again. It's been so long I can barely remember the woman's face, her house, or even the town. But for my sake, possible murderous hot hippie chick, let's not meet again, you hear me? When I was about 9 or 10, I was invited to a classmate's birthday party at some swimming baths, all of us the same age. It was a small class of about 20 kids, and I'm pretty sure everyone was invited. Just to clarify, I'm a boy. Anyway, I got kind of separated from everyone, and it was just me and this girl alone. I wasn't particularly close friends with her, but I did know her as she was in my class. To describe the location we were in, it was in a tunnel that connected the main wave pool to a lazy river. There wasn't really anybody else there, just me and her, when she suddenly lunged at me without warning. She grabbed my head and held it underwater. I was a pretty skinny kid, and she was bigger than me and a bit of a tomboy. About 20 seconds went by as I furiously tried to free myself, but she wasn't letting go. Fight or flight and mass panic took over, and I eventually fought my way free. I was coughing and spluttering water as I emerged. I remember looking at her and just being in shock. I think I began to ask why she did what she did. She again held my head underwater for what felt like a lifetime before I fought my way free. Both times I genuinely thought I was going to drown, and she didn't let me up. I had to fight my way free. I couldn't swim at this time, but the water in the lazy river and tunnel was just maybe chest high. I began to backpedal away from her. She was giggling as if it was funny, and had this kind of crazed look and grin on her face. I couldn't just climb out to escape as it was a tunnel, so I had to try and get out of there. As I was backpedaling, she was following me, and I made sure to keep distance so she couldn't lunge again, but she was gaining on me. I actually managed to reason with her as I was so scared of her. I was babbling at her. I tried to distract her by suggesting we go down a water slide together. It worked as I could see her thinking about it, and she stopped chasing me. I managed to exit the tunnel and water, and she slowly followed me, but it seemed a bit unsure. I immediately felt more safe as I was out of the water and could see other people about as we headed towards the slides. I kept talking all the way up about how fun the slides were, but she didn't really speak at all and had a really strange look on her face the entire time. Anyway, after we went down the slides, I caught up with my friends and just stuck with them the rest of the time as I was a bit shook up. I never told them about it, as it was a bit embarrassing to admit a girl had tried to drown me, and was worried I'd get teased. Anyway, fast forward to adulthood. This girl turned out to be a lesbian. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but she got with her partner, who had 2 or 3 kids from a previous relationship with a guy. It turns out they would torture the kids and eventually killed one of them. She's currently serving a life sentence in prison. I just told my friends about this swimming pool incident after hearing about her crimes, and I'm pretty sure they think I'm just bullshitting, as none of them took me too seriously. Maybe, as I kind of lightheartedly said, I was almost victim number 1. However, nonetheless, it is a bit crazy to think back, as she was obviously a genuine psychopath, and if I'd never fought her off me to escape and then convinced her to go down the slide, I genuinely believe she would have killed me. Almost a year ago, I was an opener at a resort, clocking in before 5 a.m. every morning. The resort is located inside an affluent neighborhood in a very wealthy town. Employees had to park in one of two parking lots at either ends of the property, and the lot I chose was adjacent to a long and winding road outside the resort which led to the rest of the neighborhood. The road and resort were separated by a short range of brush and trees that no one ever walked through. I'd arrived one morning per usual and put the car into park with my headlights still on. The lights in the lot weren't ever on in the morning, since no one else really showed up before 6 a.m., so it was usually always dark at the start of my walk. Save for security, I was one of the first employees to arrive on the property each morning, and was usually completely alone in this particular section of the parking lot. This morning didn't seem any different. I had my hand literally at my keys, my brain in the process to turn off the car, when I noticed a young girl, maybe 14 or 15 years old, come scampering through the span of trees that separate the resort from the outside road. She was directly in front of my car, and my headlights illuminated a clear view of her in the pitch darkness. She looked like she was in high school, had long blonde hair, and was wearing a jacket with pajamas maybe. Like she had just walked out of a house. One thing about her that bothered me was she wouldn't stop laughing and smiling. I couldn't hear her laughing from outside the car, but she was visually giggling at something I wasn't aware of or could see, and it was so unnatural. She occasionally glanced behind her as if someone else were there waiting away from the headlights. She then waved at me like it were a normal gesture, and then immediately ran to my passenger side door. This all happened in a matter of seconds, and I wasn't really sure what was even happening, besides my anxiety spiking. I know I simultaneously yanked the aux cord from my phone to shut whatever song had been playing off, while grabbing for the lock button. I remember feeling panic for never remembering if it's up or down lock when the girl began violently pulling and incessantly on the door handle on the passenger side. I realized because I didn't turn my car off, it had stayed locked. She began pounding on the window, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs for her to leave before pressing on my horn. I could see her laughing outside, like this were some type of game, as if I was a silly friend not letting her in on a joke. After a few seconds, she stopped pounding and tried to open my car door. Her face fell flat like I disappointed her. She started to walk away from my car or back the way she came. She waved at me again before squeezing through the trees, out of the view of my headlights. This whole encounter confused me almost as much as it scared me. Most people I told the story to chalked it up to her being on drugs, but that narrative hasn't felt right to me, despite her behavior. Maybe she was just being an extremely out-of-touch teenager whose parents needed a firm grip on her. My first thought was possibly human trafficking, but I'm not sure if that would fit the scenario, as I'm not the most well-versed on the subject. I told someone when I made it to the LP, but they didn't seem to care. I didn't call the police, and I regret that. It'll never get out of my brain, though, how fucking off the feeling was watching a stranger, seemingly alone, pop out from the trees in the darkness, laughing, and then to try violently entering your car in an empty parking lot. I do think the possibility of someone else being present the whole time is a lot more terrifying. And I wonder who else was there, and where exactly. Thank you guys for listening and watching to the very end. If you would like to have your story featured on the next video, email your story to the email in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay scared.